Good morning or good afternoon, Tigers. Today we'll be watching a Quizzette video on Quizzette 713. Please make sure you write your last name, comma, first name, that you write today's date, and that you circle the appropriate class color. Today I'm going to say that I'm yellow class. Number 1 is going to ask you to find a missing component of a second ratio. So let's read it. Monday number 1. In a toy store, the ratio of the number of dolls to the number of teddy bears is 6:5. If the store has 240 dolls, how many teddy bears are in the store? So again, it gives you, they provide the first ratio, and the first ratio is 6:5. And then they give you the next piece of the next ratio, 240 dolls, and they're asking how many teddy bears are in the store. Now I highlighted ratio because that's what they're giving us, ratios. Now the ratio is from dolls to teddy bears. So the first number represents dolls, the second number represents teddy bears. So 6 dolls to 5 teddy bears. The next ratio is 240 dolls to a number of teddy bears that we don't know. So I'm just going to write T here to represent teddy bears. Now we're trying to find the amount of teddy bears using this ratio of 6:5. So for every 6 dolls, you're going to have 5 teddy bears. So if you have 12 dolls, you're going to have 10 teddy bears. Excuse the interruption. That's my timer. My coffee is ready. Please hold. Oh my goodness. I just took the first sip of my coffee and it's amazing. And I just wanted you to know that. Coffee is amazing. So, one of the students in this class just said, George, what did you say?
You get aggressive when you have your coffee.
For those of you who didn't hear, he said that I get aggressive when I don't have my coffee. That comment made my day. Anyways, so since we're trying to see if these ratios are equivalent, we could put an equal sign in between them. But if I could create an equal sign with like a question mark, that's what this would be. Because the ratios are equivalent, so we're still trying to find this missing piece. That's why that question mark is there. Now, when you solve for ratios, you can cross multiply. So you can do 6 times t, which a number times a letter is just going to be the number with the letter. And then you can do 240 times 5. Now go ahead and do 240 times 5 on the other side and show your work. So if you multiplied 240 by 5, you should have got 1,200. So that's what I got as a result from 5 times 240. So I'm going to write 1,200 here. And remember, there's equal. We're still trying to question if they're equal. This statement says 6 times t equals 1,200. 6 times t. Now, I could solve that by trying to guess like what number t is. Like 6 times, I don't know, 500 is 1,200. But 6 times 500 is not 1,200. It's like some bigger number. 6 times maybe 300 might be 1,200. Or 6 times 200 might be 1,200. But rather than try to guess, I know a way that will always get you the right answer. So since 6 is being multiplied, I'm going to divide it. And when I divide something on one side of an equation, I have to do the exact same thing to the other side. The exact same thing. So if I'm dividing by 5, I have to divide the other side by 5. Everything that I'm doing on one side, I have to do to the other. So 6 goes into 6 one time. Now, I don't have to write 1t. I can just write t. Or teddy bears in this case. Now, how many times does 6 go into 12? 2 times, and then there's 2 zeros left over. So there are 200 teddy bears for every 240 dolls. That answers your question. So you could write here, there are 200 teddy bears in the store. Not to go off task too much, but when I was in college, I had a professor that told us a story about one of our presidents, Theodore Roosevelt. And I will tell you guys a story after the Quizzette video as to why we call teddy bears. It's actually connected to one of our presidents in our history. Number 2, cooking at a cafe, the cook uses a recipe that calls for eggs and milk. The amount of eggs and milk has a proportional relationship. Complete the ratio table. Now, if you remember from last week, the word proportional, another word for proportional is equal. So go ahead and write the word equal. Every time you think of proportionality, I want you to think of something that's equal. It's like saying, for every step I take, I get closer to the door. So my step gets me closer to the door. It's like a rate. It's equal. Every step is equal because my foot size doesn't change. All right, number of eggs to number of milk. So remember, when you write a ratio, you write it from y to x. So if I write this first ratio, I'm not going to write 2 over 6 because that's reading the ratio backwards. I have to read my ratio from y to x. So in this case, it's 6 over 2. Now, if I reduce it, 2 goes into both of those. 2 goes into 6 3 times, and 2 goes into itself 1 time. That's my unit rate. Okay? Now, the second ratio is missing a piece. It's missing this y right here, this y, or the milk. You could write m. It doesn't matter what letter you use. So if I'm writing this ratio, I would write y over 3. And it has to be equal to 3 over 1 because that's the common ratio that they have, right? It's proportional. So I'm going to set it equal to each other, and I'm going to cross multiply. 3 times 3 is 9. 1 times y is just 1y, but I don't have to write 1y. I could just write y. So y equals 9. So up here, you're going to write y equals 9. And let's see if it's true. Let's write it on the side. 9 over 3. Wait, you reduce that by dividing both by 3. 3 goes into 9 3 times. 3 goes into 3 1 time. Do you get the same ratio that you're supposed to get? Yes, you do. So y is equal to 9. Now let's look at our last ratio. It's missing the x. So it already set up the proportion for you. You have 12 over x equals 3 over 1. Now you just have to cross multiply. X times 3 is 3x. 12 times 1 is what? 12. 3 times something is 12. You could easily do that. 3 times 4 is 12. Or you can solve it the way I taught you. Since 3 is being multiplied, you divide it. 3 goes into 3 1 time. X is equal to 3 goes into 12 4 times. Now that's pretty cool. Number 3. A baker likes to make cookies. The graph shows a proportional relationship. Before I move on, proportional, another word for proportional is equal. Please make sure you write that. So the graph shows a proportional relationship between cups of flour used and the number of cookies made. So basically, if you have 0 flour, you have 0 cookies. If you have 1 cup of flour, you have a certain amount of cookies. If you have 2 cups of flour, you have a lot more cookies. If you have 3 cups of flour, you have a lot more cookies, so on and so forth. If you have 10 cups of flour, you have way more cookies than you probably plan to make. So the question is, what does the point 0, 0 represent? Well, if you look here, if you have 0 cups of flour, that means you have how many cookies? 0 cookies. So the point 0, 0 represents 0 cups of flour for 0 cups of cookies. That's what you're going to write. The point 0, 0 represents 0 cups of flour for 0 cookies. Now, when something is proportional, and you guys are only dealing with proportional things this year. When you get to 8th grade, that's when they're going to start showing you unproportional things. But in 7th grade, you're always going to see proportional graphs. When you see a graph like this, it's always going to be proportional. You're going to get questions like this. Is this graph proportional? If it goes through the origin, which is 0, 0, it is proportional. If the line starts up here, that is not proportional because it didn't start at 0, 0. It always has to go through the origin. Always. When you graph a line in 7th grade, it's always going through the origin. In this case, is the blue line proportional? Yes or no? No, it is not. Why? Because it didn't go through the origin. So, this line, please write this, is not proportional because it does not go through the origin. You guys know what the origin is, right? 0, 0. This line is proportional because it goes through what? The origin, 0, 0. I know it seems like a lot of writing, but it's just 2 sentences, guys. So make sure you write it.